What if Jesus appeared before you and said, "Get off the highways before September 23rd, or it will be too late"? That's what Jessica experienced during a near-death experience that changed everything. What she saw is an urgent warning to the world, and it may be about to happen. Like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on which city you're watching from. Let's spread the word before it's too late. My name is Jessica Monroe. I have 36 years old. I'm a nurse and I live in Spokane, Washington. I've seen a lot in the hospital. Deaths, rebirths, miracles, and tragedies. But nothing prepared me for what I experienced. It was a typical Tuesday. I was driving down I-90 on my way to my morning shift. I was listening to a Christian podcast when a verse echoed on the radio. "Wide is the road that leads to destruction." That gave me a strange shiver. I ignored it. I was late. Heavy traffic, impatient people, honking, everyone rushing to nowhere. At the hospital, I treated a patient with heart attack symptoms. The last thing I remember was feeling absurd pressure in the chest, as if my heart were going to explode. The lights began to flicker. The sound around me grew distant, as if I were inside a tunnel. Someone shouted, "Code Blue," and then nothing. Absolute silence. But I was awake, only outside my body. I saw my body lying on the gurney, the nurses frantic, and me, floating above it all. It was as if I were trapped between two worlds. And it was in this void that he appeared, a soft, living light, with warmth that does not burn, but comforts. Jesus. He didn't say hello. He didn't smile. He looked at me with pain in his eyes, as if carrying the weight of millions of souls. "Jessica, time is closing in. I need to show you what's coming." I tried to ask what was happening, but there was no voice, only feeling. And what I felt was urgency. He reached out his hand, and when I touched it, I was sucked into a blinding rush. Cities flashed by, colors, sounds, faces, until everything stopped. And then I saw thoroughs, familiar roads, interstates, bridges, giant highways like concrete arteries, and one word echoed within me: run away from them. That's when he said something I will never forget. Before September 23rd, they must get off the roads. They will be surrounded and destroyed. I wasn't dreaming, I knew it. This was more real than anything I'd ever felt. Jesus took me over the United States. It was like flying with my soul exposed. I saw the entire map, roads, cities, bridges, tunnels, a country pulsating, but on the verge of collapse. We stopped on the I-95, on the East Coast. It was a sunny day. Traffic was normal, cars coming and going, children in the back seat. Drivers distracted by their cell phones, listening to music, living life as if they were immortal. Jesus pointed out, "See, they rush to destruction, but they do not listen." Suddenly, a minor accident blocks one lane. Something simple, but like a domino, everything starts to grind to a halt. Traffic jams, shouts, horns honk. People get out of their cars. Tension rises like steam. This is just the beginning. And then, the collapse. Empty gas stations, looted stores, people screaming for water, fights, shoving, gunfire. The road becomes a war zone. A man steals a bottle of water from a child. A woman is run over while trying to flee on foot. There was no way out. The road had become a metal prison. Jesus held me. His eyes were wet. They trust in the roads, in the structures, in the world. But all of this will collapse. He opened a calendar before me. The pages flew by until they stopped on a date, September 23rd. A golden glow highlighted that day. That date will be a door. Those who remain on the broad path will fall. I wanted to scream, warn, run, but I was just a witness. And then, another view. In the blink of an eye, I was whisked away to the other side of the country. Now about the I-5 tearing through the West Coast, from San Diego to Seattle. Below me, California burned in chaos. The sky, once golden, was now gray, suffocating. The smoke blocked the sun. I saw Los Angeles covered by a thick cloud of despair. Abandoned cars, people running aimlessly along the highways. The palm trees were black, charred, the city of glamour, of movies, of dreams. It was a burning nightmare. Jesus said, "They trusted in their own empires, but everything that is not in me will be consumed." Luxury stores were looted. Hungry people fought over bottles of water and canned food. One man attacked another over an empty backpack. Buses were overturned, burning like torches. It was like watching the end of civilization. Police tried to control the chaos, but they were few and far between. I saw an armed group surrounding a bridge. No one was getting in. No one was getting out. The road became a burning dead end. The screams were so loud they sounded like distorted music. I saw a mother crying, hugging her son's body, a burned dog running through the flames. And there, in the midst of destruction, he appeared again. Jesus was standing on the highway, untouched by the flames. He spoke. While they say, peace and security, destruction will come suddenly. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. His voice wasn't a scream, it was sentence. I-5 was turning into a symbol of human arrogance. From the false security we have built. The message was clear. The roads are not salvation. They are traps for those who do not hear my voice. The vision changed again. I was pulled as if by an invisible force, like a leaf carried by the wind, until I hovered above the I-10, the highway that crosses the deserts of the Southwest, connecting California to Texas, passing through Arizona and New Mexico. Below, the heat was stifling. The sky was too blue, too clear, as if mocking the tragedy unfolding beneath it. I saw rows and rows of parked cars, desperate people trying to fill up at gas stations without a drop of fuel. The pumps were dry. The electronic sign read in red letters, "Out of gas, closed." It was the beginning of the collapse. People got out of their cars with plastic bottles, trying to take what they could from other people's tanks. There was shouting, there was shoving, and then a dry bang. One shot. It was like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. Chaos broke out. I saw men breaking convenience store windows. One of them was pulling a child away from a cooler, clutching a bottle of water tightly. The mother screamed in despair. Someone pushed her. She fell. Despair was in the people's eyes. It was as if they had been stripped of any morals, any humanity. They were thirst, hunger, fear. Jesus was beside me. His eyes were sad. His hand was outstretched. This is where the world shows its true colors, when everything else fails. A military convoy blocked a bridge. Helicopters circled overhead, but there was no control. Only fire, gunfire, screams, and sirens mixed with the muffled sound of explosions. I saw a woman being dragged by her purse. A young man was hit with a gun butt trying to defend his grandmother. A pastor with a Bible was pushed against a wall and left bleeding. The highway became a battlefield. Jesus said, "They called progress what was perdition." The roads they ran every day became paths of death. I felt a shiver. The surrounding desert seemed to watch in silence, like an ancient witness watching yet another fall of human empires. And then I saw a destroyed poster on the side of the road. September 23rd. Jesus is coming. The ink was drained, but legible. It pierced me like a spear. Everything he had said was happening exactly as he showed. I-10, that vein that connected states, families, lives, was now a crack open in the earth, where hope bled slowly. It was the cry of humanity struggling in its own darkness. Suddenly, I was pulled in once more. But now, there was no fire, no screams, just darkness. I stopped on the I-80, the road that cuts across the United States from east to west, crossing the fields and cities of the heart of the country, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. But now, everything was off. It was as if someone had turned off the world. No light, no power, not even the moonlight. Absolute darkness that suffocated. And even without a body, I felt cold. I-80, which used to be a symbol of flow, of movement, was now overrun with vehicles completely immobile. The headlights were dead. The taillights wouldn't come on. The engines went silent all at once. It was as if time had frozen. I saw people getting out of their cars with cell phones in their hands, trying to call. No signal, no battery, no help. "Why is it so dark?" asked a child. But nobody knew. Some lit matches and dim lanterns, but they soon went out too. I saw a man shout his wife's name in the middle of the road, but all I heard was the echo of his own voice. And then I realized this darkness was alive. She wasn't just the absence of light. She was presence of something creeping into people's minds, a silent desperation, an invisible anguish. Jesus was beside me. I couldn't see him as clearly anymore, but I still felt his presence like a gentle fire, burning inside. The world is entering spiritual night. They have closed their eyes to the light, and now they see only darkness. I felt a lump in my throat. These people weren't just physically lost, they were spiritually blind. I saw young people crying, trembling, sitting on the ground. I saw adults walking in circles like zombies, mumbling nonsense. One man fell to his knees in the middle of the asphalt and shouted, "Where is God now?" And that cut me. It wasn't just an electrical breakdown, it was the mirror of the human soul. "They have rejected my light so many times that now they no longer know how to seek it," said Jesus. Then I saw something worse. Dark figures moving on the road. They weren't human. They were shapes, shadows, and they whispered in people's ears. Words I couldn't hear, but which clearly caused panic, suicide, madness. People started attacking each other over nothing. A shove, a look, a wrong word. The road filled with fights, crying, and people hiding inside their cars as if that would protect them. But there was no protection there. This was a road no turning back. Jesus spoke with deep sorrow. "He who walks in darkness does not know where he is going, because darkness has blinded his eyes." John 2:11. And then he whispered, in pain, "September 23rd will be the milestone, the beginning of night, for those who do not choose the light." My spirit trembled. It was as if heaven had closed its curtains on humanity, and there was still more to come. I felt a new force pulling me, a silent, almost reverent wind. I found myself then on the I-70, crossing the United States from Colorado to Maryland. The Rocky Mountains, the plains, the suburbs, everything seemed suspended in time. But unlike other views, here there was something different in the air. A burden, yes, but also an expectation. The scenes below still showed chaos. Abandoned cars, cities without power, looted stores, people walking the streets like weary zombies, families separated, children crying, adults lost. But then, I saw, there in the middle of the shoulder, cutting across the highway like a thread of light, a narrow trail, made of beaten earth, almost invisible, but alive. She shone. It was a soft, almost timid light, like that of a candle on a dark night. But that light didn't tremble. It didn't go out. It cut through the darkness like a silent invitation. "The path is narrow, but it leads to life," said Jesus beside me, now closer, more present. That road wasn't paved. It was uneven, full of rocks, roots, and thorns. But it had something no highway had: purpose, direction, peace. I saw people walking on it, and they weren't the same people who ran along the wide roads. They were simple men and women, ordinary people, a mother with 3 children, an elderly man with a Bible clutched to his chest, a formerly homeless man with eyes full of light. They walked slowly but steadily. They stumbled sometimes, but some helped others to get up. I saw a young man carrying an elderly man on his shoulders. I saw 2 women sharing a bottle of water, even though they were thirsty. On that path, there were no screams. There were prayer. "Lord, guide us," murmured a kneeling woman. The sky over this road was different, clear, blue, bright. The trail wasn't easy. There were temptations all around, bright signs flashing in the distance or voices saying, "Go back, it's faster this way. You're wasting time." But they're firm. They didn't look to the sides, only straight ahead, and in front was He. Jesus walked beside them. His gaze was serene, his face was tender. He didn't ignore the difficulties of the trail, but he was there for every step. When someone stumbled, he held out his hand. "Few find this path," he said, looking at me, "but those who follow him will never walk alone." And then I understood. The wide roads were traps. Darkness was the price of indifference. Mazali, by I-70, was born, the only path that leads to life. And he repeated, in a firm voice, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there are who enter through it." Matthew 7:13. On that road, peace was not the absence of pain. It was presence of faith. And September 23rd was approaching. Just when I thought the vision would end there, in front of I-70 and that narrow road, something happened. I was carried forward, not flying, but being pulled by a gentle force, as if the road itself were calling me. I felt weightless, as if there were no more weight or time. The path of light opened before me. Narrow, yes. Irregular, yes, but viva. Each step forward seemed to traverse invisible dimensions. I felt like I was leaving the world as we know it. And then, she finished. But the end of the road wasn't a precipice. It was a portal, an opening of light so intense and pure that my words will never reach. It wasn't a blinding light, but one that it cared, that penetrated to the deepest part of the soul and revealed who you really are, and at the same time, who you were created to be. I crossed, and what I saw, it took my breath away, even though I wasn't breathing. It was a place of living light, as if everything, the air, the flowers, the mountains in the background, the endless fields, were singing in silence, in perfect harmony. There was no pain, there was no death, there was no fear. I saw people there, yes, many, people I had seen before on that narrow trail, but now they were transformed. Children ran through the fields with laughter that sounded like bells. A man I'd seen limping now walked upright. A woman who had been trembling with fear on the road now danced with her eyes closed. Overcome with peace, they shone, not with pride, but with purity, with completeness. And then, I saw him again, Jesus. But now, not as a guide, now he was king. An indescribable glory emanated from him, and yet, he smiled. A smile so full of love, so deep, that I burst into tears. These are they who heard my voice. They left the broad paths, they chose the difficult road, and they reached a destination that human eyes could never imagine. He held out his arms. The scars were still there. They shone like metals, and then he said something that burned inside me. This is the other side of September 23rd. For those who believe, it will be the beginning of eternal life. There, I understood. The scheduled date wasn't just a end, it was Adivisor. For those who continue on the wide road, it will be the collapse, destruction, darkness. But for those who choose the narrow path, it will be the crossing to the promise. I saw families reunited, friends hugging, people free from their pain, and above all, I saw peace. Not peace as the world offers, but the peace of heaven, enveloped in light, filling everything like an invisible melody. I wanted to stay, but then Jesus looked at me with compassion and said, "It's not your time yet, Jessica, but you saw, and now you must tell." The light began to close. The portal disappeared. I was pulled back, with tears in my soul, but inside me, something had been planted, unshakable hope. And September 23rd, it was no longer just a warning, it was a promise. I felt my spirit being pulled back. The light slowly closed behind me, like a golden door opening a crack and then it disappeared. My heart broke as I left that place of glory, but I knew it wasn't the end, it was the so-called. And then his voice spoke again. "It's not over yet, Jessica. Now you must see what happens to those who refuse my call." Before I could respond, I was flung back through the sky. Only now, there was no trail, there was no light, hovered over the I-35, which runs through the middle of the United States, from Texas to Minnesota, a gigantic highway used by millions, but now was unrecognizable. It was like seeing the end of an empire. Cars were twisted, piled like iron bones. Buses were overturned. Trucks were on fire. Traffic signs were down. People walked among the wreckage like specters, hungry, directionless. Their eyes were empty, as if they had given up on existing inside. I saw a father holding his son's hand, but there was no hope in his eyes. It was just survival. Jesus said, they heard the call, but said not yet. They preferred to trust in the structures, in the promises of the world. Now, they walk without direction. I saw military posts setting up barricades at intersections, not to protect but to prevent escape. Helicopters flew overhead with loudspeakers, repeating soulless messages, but no one listened anymore. The system that sustained civilization had broken. Empty supermarkets, dry rivers, power plants shut down, but the worst part wasn't physical, it was spiritual. I saw young people gathered in groups, attempting rituals with stones and candles, seeking any kind of answer. One woman cried out for help to ancient gods. Others immersed themselves in vices, drinking, and the promise of cheap pleasure, all in search of relief, of something to fill the void. But nothing filled it. It just darkened. Jesus then showed me a woman, beautiful, Young. She had heard the warning. She had watched it. She had read it. She had even commented, "Amen." But she didn't act. "It's just another internet video," she said at the time. Now she wandered the ruins of I-35, clutching a piece of paper with verses scrawled on it. She looked up at the sky, but I couldn't see anything anymore. She didn't choose, and time passed. He said in a lamenting voice. The pain in his soul was indescribable. It wasn't anger. It was sadness for everyone who refused the outstretched hand. Then I saw one last scene. September 23rd. The date hung in the sky like a stamp, but now it was split in half. On one side, the light. On the other, the shadow. Every soul I needed to choose. There was no longer any middle ground. Jesus spoke in a firm voice. "I don't force anyone, but time waits. Those who continue along the wide highways will see the destruction with their own eyes." I felt my spirit tremble. I-35 disappeared. Everything went black. And then, the last vision began. Everything around me went dark, but it wasn't the same darkness as the highways. This was dense, alive, and seemed to watch me back. Suddenly, I was lifted up above the clouds. It was far beyond the physical world, in a place no plane could ever reach. It was like a threshold between heaven and earth, and wings. The war began. On one side, the light. I saw angels, thousands, beings of indescribable glory, with eyes like fire and armor that shone like the sun. They weren't playing harps. They were prepared for combat. On the other side, darkness formed like a black tide, deformed, smoke-covered creatures with red eyes and mouths that never stopped whispering lies. They churned with hatred. It was as if the entire sky was in silence, waiting. And then I heard a voice of Jesus, like thunder and melody at the same time. "The time has come. The portal is closing. He who has ears, let him hear." September 23rd is the final separation. With these words, the battle began. The light moved like lightning, cutting through the darkness. The angels descended in perfect rows, and the darkness roared in response. It was a sound that tore the soul, a mixture of hate, despair, and pain. The two forces collided. Each blow was not just a physical battle. They were truth against lies, love against fear, faith against deception. And then I saw, as almas, millions of them, stuck between the two sides, confused, on spiritual highways. Some tried to run to the light. Others, even seeing the chaos, turned to darkness, lured by empty promises, by voices that said, "It's not that serious. You still have time. This is just symbolic." These phrases were said in millions of hearts, like a collective echo of disbelief. And then, I saw the ones that chose the light. They were sealed with a golden glow. They weren't perfect, but they had faith. I saw old people, young people, mothers with babies in their arms, former addicts, orphans, all marked by the sign of obedience. Time seemed to speed up. The sky was splitting in two. The darkness tried to advance, but could not cross the line where faith was established. Jesus raised his hand, and then, as if with a sigh, the spiritual clock struck 0. September 23rd had arrived. An invisible line descended from the sky, like a sword, definitively separating the two sides. Those who chose the narrow road were elevated, surrounded by light. The others stayed. But now, the voice of God, it would no longer be an invitation. He would be silence, and that silence was the most deafening sound of the entire vision. Jesus looked at me, and with tears in his eyes, he said, "They had their chance, and you need to tell them. There's still time, but not much." In an instant, everything went dark. The light, the war, the voices, and then my eyes opened. The sound I heard was the steady beep of a heart monitor, the smell of alcohol, the hum of machines, the white light of the hospital. I was back. My throat was dry, my chest burned, and tears were streaming down my face before I even realized what was happening. A nurse was startled to see me wake up. "Oh my God, she's back!" But it wasn't just my body that was coming back. It was my soul on a mission. A doctor came running in. My mother was crying in a corner. Someone was saying that my heart had stopped because 3 minutes, but I no longer heard with my ears. Everything inside me pulsated with a single phrase, "You need to tell." I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. It was like trying to describe the wind with numbers. It was too big. For days, I remained silent, reliving every part of the vision, the fire, the narrow road, the battle, the pain in Jesus' eyes, the final separation, and above all, a data, September 23rd. This date never left my insides. It's not superstition. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not madness. It's real. Jesus didn't show me an end of the world with movie explosions. He showed me a turning point, a before and after in the spiritual history of humanity, a door, a separation, a decision. Some friends called me overreacting. Others said it was the medication. Even churchgoers thought I was too scared. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I know what you need to hear it now. Highways aren't just asphalt. They're metaphors for wide roads, the progress we trusted, the systems we idolized, the structures that seemed solid. They will all crumble. And his warning was clear. Get off the roads before September 23rd. They will be surrounded and destroyed. This isn't about gas, traffic, or GPS. It's about your soul. Today I speak to you, not as a nurse, but as someone hootied and came back with a mission. Do you know what it's like to hear your own name in the mouth of Jesus? Do you know what it is to see him with the eyes of the soul? Do you know what it's like to feel the weight of his love, mixed with the pain of seeing so many lost? I felt it, and because of that, I can no longer remain silent. Choose now. Will you continue on the wide road, the one of empty comforts, of haste, of indifference, or will you leave it and look for the narrow trail? Why? Listen to me carefully. When the clock strikes, September 23rd, there will be no return. This isn't just a date, it's a door, and she will close. You still have time, but there is no time to waste. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment, share your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.